So I've been wanting to make some content about sexual abuse of children by their parents, which is pretty horrific. Um, yeah, I had no idea. I mean, I think my mind was open to fathers sexually abusing daughters because I had encountered many examples of that as I started uncovering my own repressed abuse. But daughters sexually abusing sons, which was, spoiler alert, the crux of that movie Eileen that I made a video about earlier. And mothers sexually abusing daughters and sons was just something, I mean, it still hasn't fully landed in me, but it just happens. So it feels important to make content about it, to just spread awareness, because abuse hides in the nooks and crannies of secrecy in society. So wherever there is unawareness, where people don't look, that is where abuse is hiding. I remember the first thing that my mother said to me when I revealed to her the sense that I'd be sexually abused, and I was kind of exploring, asking her some questions. The first thing that she said to me was, "Oh, I didn't even know that people did this to boys. I thought, I was careful about your sister. I just did not even know that this happened to boys." And it was heartbreaking to receive, but it really seeded this realization in me that awareness of what goes on is critical. Now, you don't take that awareness and get hyper protective and end up making your children's life misery, if you're a parent, but there is a balance to be had between making yourself aware of what goes on and then still showing up and acting from this place of certainty, security, safety, comfort, spaciousness. So that is the real work in front of us, and it's hard. And I think you, the viewer watching it, me, and everyone else in this time, in this era, has the capacity to really stand up and make it happen. So yeah, I did some reaction content earlier with Mary Knight's documentary, who has a history of ritualistic abuse, which really now lives in me. As it's almost like the humans sexually abusing children know somewhere that this is wrong, and then when they can seek each other's company and frame it into a broader ritualistic context, it just gives them permission to continue indulging in these lower ways of pleasure, which is what they truly are. These are ways of pleasure, but they're just lower ways of pleasure. So yeah, stunning documentary. I have a 3-part reaction series to that documentary, and part of the intent here for me is, if you're someone who's an adult survivor of childhood sexual abuse, is that let's just watch it together, so that you don't feel alone in watching it. So yeah, so I'm gonna watch her other documentary, which is Mothers and Molestation, which I've been really wanting to make some content about mothers who sexually abuse. So let's get into it.
Including human trafficking, torture, and the commercial sexual exploitation of young children. How could you do that to me? a child, but it's not an excuse. I was abused as a child, and I never abused a child. I never would.
How can you be a mother to me when I can remember having oral sex with you? How could any mother do the things you did? I want to have the kind of mother I am. I deserve to have the kind of mother I am.
Mothers and Molestation, a film about child abuse. There are many protective mothers. Did you have a good mother?
I had a great mom. She was an artist and she always supported me in my own art. She came to all of my dance recitals, all of my band recitals, shows. Anything that I wanted to pursue, she supported it fully.
Yesterday when I was at work, she just gave me a call and was like, hey, they gave me an extra pizza, do you want one? And so I was just like, oh yeah, I'm on my lunch break right now. I gave her like a big hug because then I didn't really bring anything to eat to work that day.
I had a great mother. She was pretty much my best friend. Not the best friend who lets you get away with everything, but the best friend who cares so much about you that I could go to her about anything.
What's your relationship like with her now?
The same. I talk to her every day. If we go a few days without talking, we think something's wrong with the other one. So literally we check in every day.
That was the part that took the most for therapy, is because it wasn't even the sense that my mom would ever like physically or mentally abuse me, is that she let somebody else that she was with do that.
I had made it aware to her that I wasn't comfortable being around my godfather, and she didn't do anything about it.
There are mothers who do not protect their children. There are even mothers who are molesters. People want to pretend there's no such thing as a bad mother, so no one knows what to do about it when there is.
Yeah, I want to note here that I'm very thankful to, and I'm trying to remember who this is. Mike Liu, the psychotherapist based out of somewhere in New England, who runs like groups for adult male survivors, really powerful groups, and he's written some books for specifically male survivors. I'll try to link them below or comment below if I don't end up linking them. He talks about how feminism is really responsible for driving awareness about childhood sexual abuse. Like women speaking up about sexual abuse, period, through the feminist movements, and just being like, nah, we're not gonna deal with this anymore. And there's been like many waves of feminist movements, some of which are pretty violent towards all men. And at the same time, while I hold that, I also acknowledge, feminists sowed the seed for saying no to sexual abuse, which then opened up space for discussing childhood sexual abuse, and Mike Liu acknowledges this whenever he can. And why did I start sharing about? Oh yeah, but because of that, we live in this culture where fathers have gotten like demonized, and mothers are, there's just like this cultural, at least in the conscious spaces that I'm a part of, there's this like cultural orientation towards like, oh, mothers divine, and like fathers are looked down upon often. And yeah, it feels extra hard in that cultural backdrop to sit with this reality that mothers also sexually abuse their children. And what a powerful exercise to start off with, where she just asked people what their relationship with their mothers was like, And there were some that were really good relationships and some were horrible. So that's just always how it is. But it's important to voice and surface that, yeah, like some mothers have been horrific. It's important to recognize that so that we can catch that when it's happening. Because if you're under this impression that, oh, mothers can never do something like that, you'll just never catch it. It might be happening right under your nose, you'll never catch it. And then also set a higher bar for motherhood and parenting.
What if I ask this question? Was your mother protective of you?
No, never. Ever.
Was your mother protective of you?
Yes.
Too protective?
I'm only answering Mary's question. Yes, very protective.
So let's talk about moms. What was she like as a mom?
I guess when I think about it, the first things that comes to my mind is just that you were always there. So like when I think about my child, when I think about my child, it's just like I think of mom. We were super close, still pretty close. I could always go and talk to her. So it was always kind of a place of support and like my safe place, like my touchstone. I'd go out and do stuff, and then when things got hard, I could always call you. I still can. I still do. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what was your mother like? As a mother.
Yeah. I can tell you, I never felt any love for her, or really from her, either way. She's an extreme narcissist. I mean, it's all about her, and it's always been about her. So it was never about me or what I needed or what I wanted. And, she has a cruelty to her that is pretty unmatched. I mean, she's pretty horrible.
And the thing that also supports that actually was your interview with my grandmother when she discounts child abuse, or she says it's like not a thing.
We have to help each other and forgive and understand and have empathy.
Oh, wow, I see. Yeah, this is in her other documentary, and this woman is the founder of the false memory, now defunct, like False Memory Syndrome Association, which was basically, oh my god, it just like cracks me up in a certain way every time I think about this. Like a bunch of parents who are being accused by their kids of sexual abuse got together and created this organization that then funded research that attempted to invalidate recovery of repressed memories. So just like simultaneously representative of, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you want in the US and just like horrible that they would do this, it's like so horrible that they would do this. Yeah, at least from the orientation I have, which is, if I've made some wrongs, then I would rather expend my energy in making amends for those. And this goes to whoever is watching right now. If you feel like I've wronged you in some way, like reach out. Like I'd love to make amends and own it if it is true. And instead, like they're investing energy in creating fake, like incorrect research. Yeah, it's just like insane.
And not carry grudges forever and ever. Generational, one generation after the other. Hates. He touched me. Oh my God, he touched me. And therefore he touched me and he's dead. He's dead. And
So even if there was the incestuous touch, you think the family should
I don't know
still
what
stay together?
incestuous touch is.
Well,
intercourse,
touch,
if somebody comes into your bedroom and forces himself on you, that's one thing.
What if
What if what? I had an uncle, my sister says, used to fondle her. Yeah, he'd hold a newspaper like this and he'd fondle her. Okay, he's dead. Don't ever speak to him again, he's dead. He made a terrible mistake.
so even fondling, you think?
Say, get out of here, Uncle Irving, leave me alone, and walk
So
away.
you think the little kid should be responsible
I think at a certain point, if it's uncomfortable, they should speak up for themselves and be responsible for themselves, not carry a grudge from century to century.
But if there was sexual touch, do you think the family should still stay together?
Of course.
Even if there was.
Absolutely.
You know, in some ways, and you know, this is me trying to find common grounds with her. With that caveat, I'll say that in some ways I resonate with that. Like, yeah, whatever is the circumstance of a family, like the members should be oriented towards navigating that and resolving things, and that involves people who did horrible things owning up to them and making amends, and people who were victims opening themselves up to receiving the apology and forgiving. And in a way, so in that sense, I really don't agree with this orientation of like just families breaking up left and right. There's a lot of like estranged families around, and I just don't agree with that orientation. And it requires, sometimes you just gotta say no to humans who are unable to step up and show up in the way that you need them to, especially if they've hurt you. You know, it's like yes, I can be open to forgiving my perpetrators, but the lead has to be taken by them. Like, I can present an opportunity, but they have to take it, and if they don't take it, then you know, it's like valid grounds for disconnecting for sure. And yeah, valid, that's like a healthy boundary then. But I think it is important for those of us who have been victimized, or the parts of us that are victims, to realize that actually forgiveness and amends will serve us. That's my belief. You don't have to agree with it. And offer those opportunities to the people who we believe have wronged us. Give them a sense of how they've wronged us, and then offer them an opportunity to make amends. And that, I believe, is crucial from a broader like karmic perspective. Like, you're gonna carry that karma with you. Otherwise, you know, it's like if whatever is unresolved in this lifetime like follows you into the next lifetime. And you know, karma works in funny ways, like really funny ways. Yeah, so it's like really important to resolve, clear, bring things to a closure in this lifetime to the extent that we can, while also being able to see clearly if someone is able to meet us or not, you know, because many people are not.
Yes, I don't think sexual touch is the horror of all horrors. I don't think so. I think we make a big to-do.
Oh no, when I hear that, I'm just hearing her basically fighting to turn away from the impact that, I mean, it seems to me that she probably, like if her uncle fondled her sister, it's very likely that she was fondled too. And there's like a denial of possibly the impact that her own sexual abuse had on her, and also trying to deny the impact that her sexually abusing her own daughter had on her daughter.
About nothing.
We know child abuse has a long-lasting impact. Adverse childhood experiences are traumatic events that happen between infancy and age 18. From 1995 to 1997, Kaiser Permanente and the Centers for Disease Control conducted the first adverse childhood experiences study. It followed over 17,000 Kaiser patients. Medical records were examined, and participants were asked if, as a child, they had been abused, neglected, or exposed to a family dysfunction such as domestic violence, mental illness, or alcoholism. The results were astounding. Compared to someone with no adverse childhood experiences, participants with 4 experiences were 12 times more likely to attempt suicide, 7 times more likely to be alcoholics, and twice as likely to have cancer.
The ACEs study also shows just how much child abuse there is. I don't think they were planning on finding that. And they just were shocked at just how common it is. So that was really helpful for them just to have a baseline in our country of like how much child abuse.
We don't
That's what
treat-
was
treat
shocking.
children well.
According to the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, 1 in 4 women and 1 in 6 men were sexually abused as children. You were severely abused as a child. Were you?
No.
So the cycle can break?
But I had a lot of help.
As we see, the cycle of abuse often does not break. And thinking about what it takes to have somebody recognize that, like, wait a minute, this isn't the way that love should be. Like, wait, there's something else. There's another way to do this. And some people have that inside of them, and like that wisdom, that call, I don't know what it is, that inner sense of this isn't right. And so to have somebody like my mom who has the strength to say, no, like this isn't, I'm gonna do the terrifying thing and get help and do something that I've never done before, that just blows my mind. It's amazing to me. Survivors that can do that. Yeah.
What does recovery mean to you?
Well, first you take that because you're the.
You'll have a
you're
lot to
doing
say.
more
But
recovery than I am.
I think everybody finds their own way, and I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. And I think that it's an illusion to think that we'll ever be fully recovered or cured or any of that. That's not reality. We're always, in my experience, dealing with some level of this, but we can continue to feel better in our lives. We continue to have rich lives. We can still have good relationships, meaningful relationships, meaningful careers. I mean, all of that is definitely possible. From my own experience, and then from both working as a chiropractor and a mental health provider, what I've noticed with people that have trauma is that experience has to go somewhere. So the people that tend to show it more, the symptoms are going to show up, whether they show up more psychologically and emotionally and behaviorally, or whether they show up more physically in terms of diseases and autoimmune diseases and so forth. It has to show up somewhere, or chronic pain that even doesn't have a diagnosis, that's right. So it's that, so what I tell clients is the more you address, that we have a lot of physical symptoms, the more they can tap into and are willing to look at some of the trauma, the emotional trauma, the less physical symptoms they tend to have, and vice versa.
I think the one important piece is finding connection to other humans in some way. A therapist can be that person to help kind of facilitate that, but also more than that, like having actual natural supports, finding those people that believe you and can, because it's in relationship that we're wounded, and so through relationship we heal.
Yeah, I don't know to hear that. Yes, please, like something more than therapists, because it just feels so essential to have like friends and relationships. And I just remember, I mean, I've had my own challenges around, maintaining friendships just through this journey. It's been so intense. That there were times where, like other than the therapist on a weekly basis, like there weren't many meaningful connections, and that's just sad. And it kind of reminds me of this organization in Asheville called Seek Healing, and I'm so appreciative of like the community spaces. Like they really foster community healing spaces for addicts, and many addicts are basically survivors of abuse. They foster these like community spaces for them, so it's just so where even some of the community members themselves are like facilitating healing circles. And how beautiful is that? Like how beautiful is it to help someone who's healing find a purposeful sense, like a sense of purposeful work, and also find like community. It's like really beautiful, and more of that is needed. That just like, oh my god, sticking people in like psychiatric wards and something, like how fucked up is that? How fucked up is it that the way we deal with difficult psychological challenges is similar to how we deal with prisoners? Just like ridiculous.
I
went to Starlake Elementary School. I had a speech teacher that helped me so much. My speech therapy problems were severe, but the main way she helped me was by loving me. I had speech therapy in 1st grade, 2nd grade, and 3rd grade. And by 3rd grade, most of the other kids didn't need speech therapy. So it was just me and the speech therapist and one other child. Sometimes just me and her. She wore super old-fashioned shoes. And some of the kids teased about it, but it didn't matter because she loved me. I have a picture of me when I was 3. I'm sitting on the table that we sat at when that lady was over. I sat on the woman's lap and I asked her if I could come home with her. She thought I was joking, but I wasn't. And at the end of the evening, you took me out of her arms. I cried and screamed and sobbed. You said, quit crying. She's gonna think we're bad parents. I always have remembered how heartbroken I was. I really wanted to go home with her. All the abuse I would have missed in my life had I gotten to go home with her.
Yeah, this is a really interesting scene where she's like at her mother's grave and like speaking to her mother's dead spirit. There is an exercise called aspecting, which allows you to release whatever tension you're holding towards your perpetrator. You could actually use it with anyone, but I'll just keep it specific to abuse. By just calling in their spirit, whether they're dead or alive, it doesn't matter, and then speaking to them as if they were sitting in front of you, and then switching over and then responding responding back to them, to yourself as if you were them. And a lot of like stuckness in our throat, like stuckness in expression, is often from this perceived sense of what people might say, but this is actually just in us. So this aspecting exercise is designed to really release a lot of that, and I had used it in an ISTA training, and I called in the spirit of my dead grandfather, who was my main perpetrator, and had like an aspecting session with him, and it got pretty brutal. And I'll link in this like expression realm, and I'll link an article that I wrote about my experience aspecting, but it was so healing, like so profoundly healing, to like basically confront him even though he was dead, and in some ways take revenge on the imaginary him that I'd called in, and by that release all of this like agony of like not being able to have defended myself from him. Really cool exercise. If you want to know more, like comment, and I'm happy to share more about it.
I'm in awe of that little girl who at age 3 was wise enough to know there was a better mother for me out there. We were out in the country, and I would walk to a neighbor's house to eat breakfast every weekday morning, and this was before I started kindergarten.
Wow. Just got goosebumps.
This is Mrs. Brown's house. I was always safe when I was with her. I'd walk to her house and eat breakfast, and she made what she called mush, but it's oatmeal, salty oatmeal. To this day, I love salty oatmeal. She cooked the oatmeal overnight on this wood-burning stove. She'd have homemade bread with it. Maybe that's the reason I like to make homemade bread now. I just remember feeling so cherished, so safe, so loved when I was with her. Did you have anyone like that?
I didn't have a specific person, I would say, but I always did pretty well in school, so I think I, had teachers that liked me.
I stayed in a really abusive home, but I grew up to be the person I am now. I have a happy life, and it's because of some of these childhood heroes.
Isn't that just so impressive? Like, this is someone who experienced abuse from her mother, father, in a ritualistic cult, and was basically like trafficked. Although I don't know what the exact definition. I don't think she was like transported, but she was abused by other members of the cult too. And she describes some of it in her original documentary and the earlier one. And look how like she's able to hold gratitude for the good people in her childhood. Like how beautiful is that, to like maintain that connection to gratitude, to delight. It's so crucial, especially if you've gone through shit. You gotta have that connection. You gotta really nurture it and see it where you can, and really speak it, express it.
Did you have some childhood heroes?
I did. They weren't people. They were people I read about in books. Like my hero was Nancy Drew, because she had a wonderful father. My father was a doctor. He was in general practice. He was one, there weren't a lot of doctors in our town back then. He was just one of few doctors.
Yeah. Well respected.
Well respected. My mother knew. That was awful to realize that she knew. Because the mother is the person who's supposed to take care of you, to keep you safe, and she didn't.
Why did she do that, do you think?
In retrospect, I think she did it because she was a doctor's wife, and she wanted to keep the status. And she wanted also to be seen as a good mother. And so we were always neat and clean and well-behaved, and we got good.
Yeah, on a note here, how she's able to speak on behalf of her mother, who failed her horribly, but she's able to speak on behalf of her as to like why she thinks she couldn't protect her. And I think that is really critical. It is really critical to be able to humanize these people who have let us down, these people who have abused us, and be discerning about it, like not just make up stories to justify the abuse. Nothing justifies abuse, but it's important to like really understand the perspective where they're coming from, so you can hold the horrors that humans are capable of. Like, you don't have to be evil to do horror. Like, actually humans are capable of horror, and it's like really important to like acknowledge the circumstances that lead to horror. And they're very human circumstances, like what she talks about, like wanting to maintain status. I'm sure you and me have been in situations where we have acted in ways that felt misaligned because we wanted to maintain status. So there are these human things that lead to horrific acts, and it's just important to recognize that instead of demonizing every horrific act that you see, because then you become susceptible to that yourself.
Grades, so she could consider herself a good mother.
She really did it. I mean, obviously she had more money, married to a doctor too. And this was long enough ago that there wasn't a guarantee of child support like there is now. So her finances would have changed. So in a way, she pimped you.
Yes, my mother pimped me.
Yeah. In a sense, you were a survivor of human trafficking, but it was your mother who made you available to your father.
Right. And every time he came home, from work, we would always have to run to him and give him a big hug and say, "Daddy."
Why didn't you tell anyone about the abuse? I mean, I get asked, like, well, why didn't you tell someone when you were a child?
I did tell someone when I was about 6.
Who did you tell?
I don't remember. But the story got back to one of my 2 parents, and they realized that they would have to do something to silence me. Dad made me, he made me do something. He made me eat something that I thought was poisonous, and I thought I thought he was killing me. I thought my father was killing me.
And your father's a physician, right?
Yeah, he
so
is.
he would know whether or not that would kill you.
Yeah, he would.
But at age 6,
I didn't know.
you thought it was going to kill you.
I did. And I was awfully surprised to wake up in the morning because I thought I was going to die, but I woke up. But I was unsure that I thought I might die the next day. It took me a couple of days before I realized that I was going to live.
Yeah. And it did silence you. And was that when you started? Was that when you started hiding that knowledge of it from yourself?
Yeah, that is because I could never talk about it again. I could never think about it. So anytime I thought about it, I would have to push it away. I would just say, forget it.
Yeah, it's an interesting description of how the repression started. So at least according to her own sense of her childhood story, she was remembering it for a while, but then she was threatened and then scared of being killed. And then that is where the repression started. And I don't remember. Yeah, it makes me wonder if I should do some like hypnotherapy or EMDR or something. Because I have this nagging sense that or when my grandma asked me, my grandfather's wife, the grandfather who abused me, like, why didn't you say something? I had this sense of like, oh, but I told you. And I don't know where that came from. Yeah, I don't know where that came from. I just remember like not liking my grandma all through my childhood because she would be like just like extra doting, and I had this sense of like, ugh, just like get away from me. And I don't remember her sexually abusing me, but I think there was something about being betrayed. It's like, you know, you've betrayed me, just get away from me. I don't want your doting, like it doesn't matter to me. But then I don't have recall.
I wrote a book, Miss America by Day, 11 years after a newspaper reporter in Denver learned that my father had come into my room from the time I was 5 until I was 18. It was a secret so traumatic that I had blocked it from myself. That's very difficult for people to understand, that you can repress 13 years of the nights of your life. But how could I remember? How could I get up and go to school every day and get A's and be in the choir and be on the ski team if I knew what I was going home to at night and there was no one to help me and there was no way to get out of there? I had to block it, which I did.
And that's why you forget, that's why repressed memories happen. Because little kids are so vulnerable, they need their adult caregivers to survive. So in order to process that, in order to stay and not die, and not actually die, you forget, right? So you just kind of compartmentalize, and it's amazing that the human body can do that. It's brilliant. It's
a survival mechanism.
The betrayal trauma theory was developed by Dr. Jennifer Fried, an author and memory researcher. When children are abused by their caregiver, they may dissociate and lose conscious knowledge of the abuse in order to maintain the needed relationship.
Humans have a very well-developed attachment system. The attachment system works in both the infant and in the caregiver. We've got a reciprocal relationship in the sense that both the caregiver and the infant are giving each other reinforcement for this relationship, and the infant has to do that because this is an extremely resource expensive relationship for the caregiver. So imagine that baby detecting some mistreatment and trying to respond in the way an empowered person would. That baby's probably risking his or her life because the caregiver might withdraw.
So at the very core of trauma is the whole notion that our brain scan showed it is the verbal language center of the brain gets knocked out when people become extremely...
I'm a little disappointed that these are like very similar clips from her other documentary. I was kind of hoping for some new stuff. So I might forward every now and then, and if I do that, then you can, and if you're watching this, then you can just go back to my other reaction videos and watch those. I think I'll pause this here for today. It's a lot to digest. Oh my god. Wow, it's only like 6:44 here and it's like pitch black. Absolutely pitch black. Yeah, such a wild world that we live in, truly. Yeah, if you're watching this and if you are someone who's recovering from whatever abuse that you've experienced, you have my prayers for well-being, you have my prayers for staying grounded, staying in your body, being safe, for not finding yourself in situations again where bad things happen. Yeah, you have my prayers for all of that, and my prayers to the benevolent spirits that are always watching out for us, so that they may wrap you in their care too. Alright, thank you.